The house on Willow Lane. They say you can't go home again, but they never tell you what to do when home is the only place left standing. My name's Hank Fletcher. I'm 71 years old, and up until last October, I hadn't stepped foot on Willow Lane in over 40 years. Back in the 60s, that street was my whole world. A crooked little neighborhood on the edge of Elmsburg, Ohio, where lawns were always freshly mowed. Screen doors creaked like clockwork, and neighbors called out greetings over hedges with coffee mugs in hand. And at the very center of it all was a yellow house with green shutters, number 314 Willow Lane. That was my home. More than a place, it was a feeling, the kind that wraps around you like a wool blanket on a cool autumn morning. My parents, Harold and Louise Fletcher, bought that house the summer before I was born. Mom said it smelled like bread the first time she walked in. She always believed that was a sign it would be a house where people would stay. And they did, for decades, until they didn't. I left in the summer of 1979. Left it all, not out of anger, not even rebellion, just life pulling me forward. A job offer in Tampa. A girl I thought I'd marry, spoiler alert, didn't. And a belief that bigger and better lay beyond the state lines, Ohio. I wrote postcards at first, called on Christmas. But life has a way of accelerating, of taking those good intentions and replacing them with invoices, deadlines, and business trips. Years slipped past like pennies in a fountain. When Mom passed in '98, I flew in for the funeral. Stood on that porch for the first time in nearly 20 years. The paint was chipped, the mailbox crooked, but the porch light, that old brass fixture with the crack in the glass, still glowed, just like it always had. Dad passed in 2005. After that, the house sat quiet. My sister Lorna, who stayed in town, checked in every now and then, said it still felt like Mom and Dad were inside, just out of the room for a minute. But I couldn't go back. Not really. Until last fall, I got a letter. Yes, a real letter. Not an email, not a text. The kind that arrives with stamp and a scent of something old. It was from a woman named Margaret Carmichael. Said she bought the house on Willow Lane and while renovating, had found a box tucked away in the attic crawl space. Inside were letters. Dozens. Addressed to me from my parents. Letters they'd written over the years. Birthdays, anniversaries, missed moments. Ones they'd never mailed. Some even dated long after they passed. Margaret wrote, I didn't read them, but I figured they were meant for you. The house, it still remembers you. That last line broke me. I booked a train the next day. I arrived on a gray Wednesday morning in October. Elmsburg hadn't changed much. Still the same diners with flickering neon. The same quiet gas stations where the attendant wipes the windows out of habit. When I stepped onto Willow Lane, it was like stepping into a dream. The trees arched above like they always had, golden with fall. Kids' bikes still lay in yards. Wind chimes still clinked on porches. And there it was, number 314. The shutters were a brighter green now, the door replaced. But the soul of the house was untouched. Margaret met me on the porch. She was in her 60s, warm smile, the kind of woman who probably baked muffins just because it was Thursday. She handed me the box with both hands and said, Take your time. I sat on the porch steps, the same ones I'd used as a boy to watch thunderstorms roll in, and opened the box. The first letter was dated June 15th, 1980. Dear Hank, I know you're busy building your life, and I'm proud of you. But this morning I saw a cardinal in the backyard and remembered how you used to chase them with binoculars when you were 10. Your mother made apple pie and said she left a slice in the fridge in case you stopped by. We know you won't, but we still set a place at the table sometimes, just in case. Love, Dad. I must have sat there for an hour, reading one after another, some from Dad, some from Mom, some funny, others heartbreaking. One where Mom wrote about holding my childhood blanket and crying into it after a dream she had about me getting married. They'd never sent them because they didn't want to bother me. They wrote, didn't want to interrupt my new life, but they needed to say the things anyway. So they wrote them down, tucked them away, in the house that remembered. I stayed the night in a local inn, couldn't sleep. My mind kept drifting back to the hallway upstairs, the one where I carved my initials into the baseboard the night before I left for Florida. I wondered if it was still there. The next morning, I asked Margaret if I could come in again. She smiled. Want the grand tour? I nodded, but really, I didn't need a tour. Every corner lived in me. The mark on the wall from where I crashed my bike inside. The closet where I kissed Jenny Maxwell during a birthday party. When I was 11, the den where Dad told me JFK had been shot. The kitchen where Mom hummed Moon River while folding laundry. Memories weren't just in the walls. They were the walls. That afternoon, something inside me shifted. I'd spent decades moving forward, always chasing the next thing. But in doing so, I'd left behind a part of myself, the softest, truest part. I sat out back under the oak tree, the one Dad planted the year I was born, and I read every last letter. Some were no more than a few lines, others pages long. One had a press leaf inside from a walk Mom took with a note. Thought you'd like the shape. They were time capsules, bottled moments of love that waited for me all this time. And I finally opened them. I stayed in Elmsburg longer than I intended. What was supposed to be a 2-day trip stretched into a week. I couldn't bring myself to leave. Every morning I walked past that yellow house, and every evening I circled back like a moth to a porch light that still glowed, warm and waiting. Margaret invited me in more than once. Said it felt right having me there. She and her husband had only moved in 6 months earlier and were still learning the house's language, as she put it. Funny thing about old houses, they speak if you know how to listen. One morning, I wandered upstairs to what had once been my room. The walls were painted pale blue now, but the sloped ceiling was the same, and the view from the small windows still overlooked Mrs. Delaney's rose garden next door. I found myself reaching out, fingers brushing the molding by instinct, and there they were. HF Plus Jam, carved with a pocket knife when I was 16. Jenny Maxwell and I had made grand plans to run off to California. She was going to be a singer. I was going to be her manager. We never made it past Cincinnati. Still, I smiled because the memory was real, and the wall remembered. Later that day, I helped Margaret sort some things in the garage. She was kind enough to let me go through a few dusty boxes left behind in the attic. Old tools, yellowed newspapers, and something I hadn't expected, a reel-to-reel tape recorder. My dad's. We used to make recordings on Sunday afternoons. Him on the piano, Mom singing along, me narrating like a game show host. Welcome to the Fletcher Family Hour. I'd croon in my high-pitched 10-year-old voice. I dusted it off, took it to a repair shop on Main Street, and by some miracle, it still worked. That night, I played the first reel. The static crackled. Then came a familiar sound, my mother's laughter. Hank, put that cookie down, we're recording. Then the jangle of piano keys. Here we go. A1 and 2. They sang, You Are My Sunshine. I joined in toward the end, slightly off-key but beaming. I remember that day, the smell of cinnamon, the dog barking in the background, the way Mom winked at me after the final note. I cried listening to it, not the silent kind of cry, the full, chest-shaking, open-throated kind. Decades of distance melting all at once. They weren't gone, not entirely. A part of them lived in magnetic tape and floorboards and light fixtures that still flickered just so. I began writing letters of my own. Not to send, just to say what had gone unsaid. To my parents, to Jenny, to the younger version of myself who left too quickly. Thinking time was endless. I sat in the old breakfast nook and wrote by hand. The sun still hit that corner, just right around 10:30 a.m., spilling warmth over the tiles like it used to when Mom served toast with marmalade. I told them everything, about the jobs I'd taken, the women I'd loved, the moments I'd regretted, the things I'd forgotten I was capable of remembering. Each letter felt like laying down a stone in a path leading home. Margaret watched me one morning as I placed the last letter gently in the box. She asked softly, Do you think you'll come back again? I didn't even hesitate. Yes. Because for the first time in years, I felt like myself again, not the version molded by schedules and success, but the boy who believed in porch lights and Sunday songs. I decided to stay a little longer. In the evenings, I helped repaint the fence. Not out of obligation, just because it felt right. The brush in my hand, the scent of fresh paint, the low hum of cicadas. It grounded me. Some kids on bikes waved one afternoon. "Hey, mister, you live there?" I smiled. "Used to." One of them nodded. "Looks like you still do." On the sixth night, I sat with Margaret on the porch swing, the same one Dad hung back in '67. It groaned with every sway, but it held. She asked me what the house meant to me. I looked at the porch light, still glowing, and said, "It's a memory that never gave up." I woke early that morning, long before the sun stretched its way over Elmsburg. The house on Willow Lane creaked in the same old rhythm it always had. The pipes sighed. The wind tapped the windows with gentle fingers. And I knew it was time, not just to leave, but to let go. Margaret found me in the kitchen, coffee already brewed, as if the house had whispered my schedule to her. "I made banana bread," she said with a smile. "Just like your mom used to, I think." She had no idea how much that meant. We sat in quiet for a while. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. I took a bite, closed my eyes, and I was 10 again, legs swinging under the table, Mom humming to herself at the sink. Packing was easy. I hadn't brought much, but it took me hours to say goodbye. I walked through each room slowly, hand brushing across the banister, pausing by the grandfather clock that had stood silent for 20 years. Margaret had offered to wind it again, but I told her not to. I liked it the way it was, a little broken, a little beautiful, just like all of us. In my old room, I left a letter taped to the inside of the closet door. Not for Margaret, not even for myself, for the house. In it, I thanked it for holding my family's laughter, for withstanding the storms, for waiting for me, even when I didn't know I'd return. I told it I'd be back, because I would. As I drove away, I glanced one last time in the rearview mirror. The house stood still, but the porch light flicked on in broad daylight. Margaret swore it was motion sensitive. Maybe it was. Or maybe some homes know when to say goodbye. 3 months passed. I returned to my apartment in Denver, to the noise and rush of a city that never once felt like it was mine. But something had shifted. I started calling my brother more. I wrote to old friends. I framed a reel-to-reel tape and hung it by my desk, and I began sharing stories. Not just the ones from my past, but stories of others too, of people who'd loved, lost, wandered, and somehow found their way home again. One day, an envelope arrived from Elmsburg. No return address, just a note inside. "You forgot this. Thought you might want it back." It was a carving, HF Plus Jam, carefully sanded from the wall and wrapped in cloth. A new layer of varnish covered the wood, but the initials were still clear. Jenny Maxwell. Funny how a teenage dream could come back as a 50-year-old gift. I smiled, set it on my shelf, and looked out my window. Maybe home wasn't a place. Maybe it was a story we kept telling, again and again, until we finally believed it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your memories matter, and we're here to celebrate them one story at a time. See you in the next golden moment.